General to change the security around Greenland. Now, a lot of the deals and a lot of the details around this framework are yet to be seen, but we understand it includes a number of points that the U.S. believed were important, and that means that there could be potentially more space and capabilities for U.S. troops to be placed and stationed in Greenland, which of course belongs to Denmark, greater European commitments for security in the Arctic, and more U.S. investments. Of course, a lot of this is still up in the air. It does not change the Danish position that they will not talk about sovereignty, but it does seem that there's been de-escalation through NATO and the NATO Secretary General. So the tariffs will not be going into effect. Some de-escalation in the language too.
So, OK, the speech not as aggressive, Maria, as anticipated, but the US president still sounds very determined to get Greenland. We can just take a listen now to an excerpt from Donald Trump's 72-minute speech.
We never asked for anything, and we never got anything. We probably won't get anything unless I decide, but I won't do that. OK? Now everyone's saying, oh, good. That's probably the biggest statement I made, because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland.
Donald Trump there. So, Maria, relief, of course, that President Donald Trump will not use force. What have the reactions been?
Well, yes, Maven. I was on the floor at the World Economic Forum when he delivered that speech, and that one-liner, "We will not take it militarily," that was really the highlight of the speech, and it was perceived as, again, a ramp-up for de-escalation, which, of course, materialized hours later. But we should stress, of course, that concern from the Europeans is very much present. There was fury that was very palpable. We did see Christine Lagarde walking out of a dinner in which a U.S. representative spoke in terms that were seen as unacceptable. And, of course, this has created a real dent. A lot of that perhaps explaining why the U.S. felt they needed to take a step back, including, by the way, bipartisan criticism here in Davos, saying this was crazy.
OK, Maria Tadeo, thank you so much for that update. And another topic in focus in Davos today is the ongoing war in Ukraine. Our Maria Tadeo, who we just saw, had the chance to speak to Marta Koss, the EU Commissioner for Enlargement. Take a look.
Commissioner, thank you so much for joining us on Euronews. You will be meeting with the Ukrainian president, but also a number of instrumental partners, including, if I'm not mistaken, BlackRock, for the reconstruction of this country. What do you hope to get out of the meetings?
We hope that we could gather first the agreement on the importance of the enlargement process and economic development for the prosperity and also security of Ukraine. I'm happy that we have been able to come to the agreement on the so-called prosperity paper, which is somehow a framework defining how to develop Ukraine after the peace or in the future. And we have done this together with the US, Ukraine and the European Commission. One of the most important points for the future of Ukraine is reconstruction. We can only be successful if we will bring private capital. But we will not be able to bring private capital in if we will not make the conditions, the business conditions, so that the investors will feel safe.
And BlackRock is a big name. BlackRock can change things.
Indeed, and it is European Union is not enough. State money or EU money is not enough. We desperately need also private engagement. And out of the talks I have had until now in Davos, I can see the interest is very big. But of course, everybody would like to end the war as soon as possible.
And of course, there was a lot of speculation in the days prior as to whether or not President Zelensky would be here. It looks like he is going to be. He also did say, I'm going to Davos for something specific. What can you or what can he get out of the meetings that will happen today, specifically in details?
For me, the most important point is here getting the assurance that there is the interest for Ukraine or helping Ukraine or developing Ukraine is big. Sometimes we think just in the political terms, but we should go into the economic terms. And the economic terms means that we need investments for the prosperity and for the security.
As you know, there's been a lot of speculation, also rumors in the press that the European Union will be prepared now to offer Ukraine what is called a sort of membership light, and also do it fast. Some say even by 2030. Are you working? Is this something now that you're open to saying, yes, we need to put a date on when Ukraine joins?
We know that this date, January the 1st, 2027, is apparently still in the 20 points of the peace plan. I don't know what will be the end version of this document, but we have to be ready. And, you know, I'm always saying in these challenging times, we have to think out of the box in the times when there is no box.
Even in a year, in 2027, it's right around the corner. Some would say that would destroy enlargement if that happens.
With the present methodology, this is not possible. And of course, we have to get a green light for our member states. We have to discuss a lot what needs to be done in future. But, you know, it is generally, when we speak about the enlargement, it is not just about bringing the countries into the EU. It is making us stronger. In the past, we have been able to answer to big challenges like the end of the dictatorship in Spain, Portugal, Greece, and then we took those countries in. The end of the Berlin Wall or Cold War, we have been for the first time able to bring the communist countries in. So now it is again a big challenge. It has proved the history that we are able to deliver. I'm optimistic that we will deliver.
Commissioner Marta Kos, thank you very much for joining us.
A pleasure.
Martha Kos there with our EU News editor, Maria Tadeo. Well, the US President Donald Trump hogged all the headlines at this year's World Economic Forum, even before his arrival. The red carpet was also rolled out for him all across the snow. Our Jakob Yanis takes a look at whether this year's World Economic Forum was a one-man show.
This year, the world's biggest conference was adapted to fit one man, and he kept the world waiting. An electrical fault forced Presidential Air Force One to make a U-turn mid-flight. But once he finally landed, his gravity did not just change the mood, it changed the schedule. Hundreds of CEOs and leaders reshuffled their agendas, prioritizing access over the official program. And Trump is now accompanied by a record-breaking delegation. 5 cabinet secretaries, senior advisors and support staff, constituting the largest American contingent in the event's history. And the security matches. 5,000 Swiss soldiers are deployed to Davos for this week. Mobile phone signals flicker wherever he goes. But this comes at a cost. Ukraine was supposed to be the event's headline. But a massive $800 billion prosperity plan between Ukraine, Europe and the US is delayed for now. President Zelensky found his message competing for airtime with a territorial dispute over Greenland. In previous years, Davos was more of a platform for two-way dialogue. But this year, it felt more like a listening exercise to Donald Trump's rambling speech. So as the private jets leave the Swiss Alps, the EU goes home with a new reality. And yes, we hear your comments on social media saying that we talk too much about him. It is true, but it is now or never for the EU to figure out how not to be eclipsed in Donald's world.
And that's what EU leaders are hoping to figure out tonight over emergency talks here in Brussels. For more on the reactions to the Davos deal and also to look ahead to tonight's summit, I'm joined now in the studio by Euronews' Shona Murray. Shona, bring us up to speed here.
Well, Maeve, I'd say for the first time in days, EU leaders had a good night's sleep, as did the people of Greenland, for at least one night after this announcement from Trump last night. Now, we did report on Tuesday that there was potentially an off-ramp in Davos, and that seems to have materialised. We don't know the full details of this framework agreed with Trump, NATO, Denmark, Greenland, but it appears to protect the territorial integrity of Greenland, of Denmark as well. But at the same time, EU leaders are still meeting for that emergency summit. That's still going ahead because there are other things to talk about: transatlantic relationships, the Mercosur deal, which we know the Parliament has sent to the European Court of Justice, and this controversial Gaza peace board. So they will meet this evening and discuss the last few days, which have been pretty, hot-headed. But I think everyone will agree that they can breathe a bit of a sigh of relief momentarily.
Indeed, but lots to chew over right now for the European Union. And of course, that EU-Mercosur deal will be on the table tonight too, after that European Parliament vote just yesterday. Well, we had also, for another view, the chance to sit down with Jean-Claude Juncker, that is the former Commission President. I started by asking him what he thought of President Trump's speech in Davos.
I was expecting a more aggressive tone. It was less aggressive than it was pre-announced, but nevertheless, it was like it was.
But it was quite strong on Greenland, right? I mean, he said he wants to start immediate negotiations to acquire Greenland. He said, all I am asking for is a piece of ice. It means diplomacy now is not working.
Whatever he said, one thing is remaining sure. If a NATO ally attacks or threatens another NATO ally, this is inaugurating a process at the end of which we could witness a breakdown of NATO. It's something impossible.
And tell me, you know Donald Trump.
Yes.
So what should the Europeans do? We know Ursula von der Leyen, she left Davos to go to Strasbourg. Should she not have flown back to Davos to have that opportunity to speak to Trump?
Would she have done so? She would have had a few minutes of talks with the President of the US. That wouldn't make sense. We don't have to be there where the President does us want to be.
If you were the Commission President now, what would you be doing faced with all these threats?
I would clearly explain to the American President that we are ready to respond in a proportionate but strong manner to the threats he's spreading around, that the European Union is cannot be submitted to a kind of neo-colonial behavior, that the European Union has its own honor and is respecting the US, but is not a slave of the United States of America. He knows that, but he doesn't take this into account, at least not publicly.
And would he listen to you?
I don't think that he is, for the time being, in a very listening mode. It has become more and more difficult to talk to him in a friendly manner.
And tonight, of course, Thursday, EU leaders are meeting for an emergency summit in Brussels.
Yeah.
How should they react? With diplomacy and dialogue with Donald Trump, or with more punitive measures?
Diplomacy is always the best way to deal with problems of this kind, but the European Union has to make clear to him, the President and others in the world, that we are ready to defend the European interest.
Okay. Jean-Claude Juncker, former Commission President, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Well, that brings this edition of Europe Today to an end. For more news on Davos, the EU summit tonight, or the votes that took place yesterday on Mercosur over in the Parliament, do visit our website, euronews.com. We'll have live blogs running all day and night. But thank you now so much for tuning in. See you very soon here on Euronews.
At a moment defined by profound geopolitical shifts, world leaders come together in Davos. And Euronews has the only ticket you need.
Euronews from Davos.
From bustling corridors to exclusive sessions, we capture the conversation